So, I know it's been a couple of days. I am kind of busy. I've got a deadline that I need to hit, so I can't stay too long on this. But I did not want to keep going without sharing the various things. So, yesterday, I found out that, I've known that okay, so quick backup. I'm calling him E. We broke up a couple of months ago. Didn't want to, had to because of circumstances. Very much in love, sad, but supportive and loving of each other. And we ended the relationship in the best way you could possibly end a relationship. And recently he lost his job. It was a layoff. The the company he was worked for lost a lot of jobs, so he was laid off. And since I'm really his only support system up here, he decided to move back to New Jersey to be with to live near his sister. So this is the month he's moving back, and he found a place, and I know that that's inevitable. He's moving, and it's honestly the best thing given the situation we're in. What's happening is the best thing that could be happening. I just wish things were different, and I feel that kind of queasiness in my stomach. But knowing that he now has a place and has moved half his stuff down there and is going to be moving, it's just like there's some big feelings there. Like I can feel it all the way up and down here and in my gut. And I'm trying to breathe deeply without making myself dizzy. And relax the areas that are clenched. It's not pleasant. So he is finishing his move in the next week or so. We saw each other a couple of weeks ago and had a lovely dinner and enjoyed each other's company, as we always do. We always have a lot of fun together. We were stuck together in COVID in like basically a studio apartment, and we never fought. We just... Anyway, that's not really relevant. Relax the gut. It's hard to relax your gut, but just relax. Just imagine those things relaxing. Yeah, there's not a lot I can do about the emotions that I'm having. I'm gonna have them, right? The important thing is to accept that they're there and not try and push them away or get away from them. Not try to imagine that they're not there or pretend like they're not there. Acknowledgement and allowing myself to feel them is the only way to get through them. Because otherwise, you hold on to them and you never get through it. It sucks though. And I suppose, like Michael Singer would say, like this is part of being human, in the sense of like this is part of the human experience. And therefore it's beautiful, and we should appreciate the full range of emotions that we get to feel in our own human experience. And that's true, and I do, but it also does not feel good, and I'm working on the whole let's enjoy this feeling thing, because right now I'm not enjoying it. So that's really one of the main things on my mind. In addition to that, I am up against a deadline that I should have done this work a couple of months ago. To be honest with you, I should have been finished a couple of months ago, but I have this thing. This is another thing we can talk about. Hopefully it won't take too long. This is my smoothie. Really not as gross as it looks. Pretty good, actually. Okay. So, as most of us do, I do procrastinate. And I'm working on that. one of the things that I sort of journaling about is that, um, my main problems. Okay, so what I do is I use this book. So I use this book, right? This is one of my favorite books. And what I do is I haven't really gotten through all of it in a long time. But the very beginning is talking about the basic precepts of Buddhism. And the basic, besides meditating, which is stopping, calming, resting and healing, right? The next thing, that's the basis, right? The next thing is the Four Noble Truths, which are like suffering, sort of the recognition of suffering, the arising of suffering. So what goes into the suffering? What you examine your suffering. Okay, you identify what it is you're suffering from in like detail. And when I first did this, back when I was first getting out of the depression last year, I spent a week, and it's amazing that you can actually do that, because you're like, oh, I know what I'm suffering from. But no, if you start journaling and talking about your suffering, you can go on for a while. Believe it or not, you just got to examine it like really closely. So then once you've examined that, you examine the causes of your suffering. Like, what have you been taking into your body, your mind, and your soul that have caused this suffering? So going back to the original, the first noble truth, right? Each noble truth has a turning. They call it like 3 turnings, right? The first one is recognition, and all of them, the first one's recognition. The second one is encouragement, and the third one is realization. So suffering, in the suffering, you are recognizing, I am suffering. Like, that's the first one. I am suffering, right? Then you need to understand the suffering. So, I am suffering from, I'm suffering from heartbreak and grief and like loss and anger and frustration and resentment and bitterness. Like, these are all the things that I was suffering from. I've been able to get some of those under control. You know what I mean? Like, so I got that. Yeah, okay, I'm suffering, and I'm naming what it is, that, like, diagnosing basically what my suffering is and coming to understand it. So you need to understand where it's coming from. And the 2 main causes of my suffering are one, the breakup, and 2, the fact that I don't do what I need to do to get myself ahead. So examining those was and is an interesting process, and I have done plenty of videos on them, but let's revisit, shall we? So the reason I like looking at the suffering from the breakup, right? There's the grief and the loss and stuff like that I am obviously going to feel. I look so great today, don't I? I'm obviously going to feel in response to this. I heard a few weeks ago this really great saying that grief is love with no place to go. And I think that's very, very apt. So I have all this love in my heart that I can't give for E, but I can't give to him. And that hurts. So, there's the grief, but the suffering part, there's the hurt that's inevitable. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is choice, right? We suffer by choice, and the suffering I had to call my mom. The suffering I have, that's the anger and the bitterness and the frustration and the resentment and all that stuff, and those things have to be examined, right? Like, why do I feel those things? What's at the root? And for me, for example, at the root of one of the things, so I feel the circumstances basically really, and you have to take for granted that this is legitimate, like this, there's a reason for this, but the basic circumstances are that he's from a different culture and his mother would not approve of us, and in that sense, like, he would be disowned, or something could potentially happen to his mother, like a heart attack. And while that sounds kind of ridiculous to Western ears, it's just the way it is. And he's a good and kind person, and he values his mother's well-being above his own happiness, which he's being a dutiful son, and that's commendable. He's giving up, something that makes him truly happy, and that could make him truly happy for the rest of his life, because, so, here's where the frustration comes in, where, like, the anger. And it's a lot of anger is towards her. But for him, it's like I was feeling anger and resentment, and you know what I mean. Like, not. I mean, I understand. I really do. I can really understand. But there's also part of me that is angry at him, or is maybe still is a little angry at him. But I've been working through it. And the reason for that, though, is obviously that he's hurt me, or the situation has hurt me, and part of me blames him, even though it just is the situation and really nobody's fault. And where that comes from, I discovered, is from my need rather than from my love of him, from my need of being loved, and from my need of feeling validated, and angry that this love is being taken away, angry that my comfort and this joy is being taken away from me. Although that's not true, because I still have that. I just don't have it anymore, but it's still inside of me. So what I discovered was that a lot of my suffering was coming from my need to be in a relationship, my need to feel loved, like the things that I loved about our relationship, I want those, right? And that's where that's preference, that's want, that's need, you know what I mean? And that's not love. That's not love. Love is generous, love is kind, right? What is that passage in Paul? But love is not jealous. It doesn't want somebody else's, it doesn't want its own happiness above someone else's. And that's what I want to feel. That's what I want, like, ideally, right? If we're all working for our better selves, right? Isn't the ideal, and it's what I want, to feel love, which is a freeing emotion because there's nothing attached. You don't attach anything to it, right? Unconditional love. That's what I want to be filled with, and that's what is being challenged by my needs, right? By my preferences. And that's what I've been working on letting go. And the way I've been doing that a lot of the time is examining the situation and recognizing that, get that loosened up. Yeah, I'm gonna do some yoga, get that stuff loosened up. But recognizing that there's no other choice. This is actually the best choice in the circumstances. The thing that I've had the hardest time with in my life is reality. I don't like accepting it. If I don't like the reality, I choose not to accept it, and that has caused a lot of problems. So please, anybody out there who has the same problems, just accept that things are the way they are. This is the reality right now, in this moment. The future, the past is past, can't do anything about it. The future You can build towards a better future, but you don't know what's going to happen. So I used to project all these thoughts like, okay, so this will happen, this will happen, this will, because of this is going to happen, because of that, this is going to happen. And whatever. Or I spent all my time wishing that the current reality was different and trying to make it different, and that is just pointless. Pointless. Expended energy, expended emotion, stress, fear, anger, resentment, bitterness, all of that, anxiety, all of that goes into holding on to this idea of what you want and trying to make it that way, right? The outside is never going to match what you want on the inside, so you have to make the inside okay with whatever goes on in the outside. That's a basic precept of all the untethered soul stuff that I've been talking about in the past several months. And, that takes some journaling to come to terms with. But another thing, for instance, is the anger and resentment I have felt towards his mother. Like, just really, you can only imagine, right? Like, this is the person that I have felt the most comfortable with and the most love with, and who I feel accepts me 100% completely for who I am. I can be 100% myself in front of him. Never, not holding anything back about myself, right? And not only does he accept it, but he loves it. He loves me for exactly who I am. And that's something that I've never had before, to be honest with you. Like, even in my family, right? My family loves me, but they never really liked me. You know what I mean? Like, my personality, who I was, my desires, my preferences, those aren't who we are, but those are who we are in a way. You know what I mean? Like, what I felt was me was never really accepted by my family. It was always seen as something wrong. So I always thought there was something wrong with me. But when I met E, and we just started things really casually, like we were friends who worked together, right? We're friends, and that's it. But I started getting really interested in him as a person, because he's from a different country, and I wanted to learn Arabic, and so, we ended up spending a lot of time together. We would eat our lunches together at work. And I lost my car, so he would come and pick me up and drive me to work and then drive me home. So we ended up spending all this time together. And, we ended up sort of casually, like, I thought it would be like a friends with benefits thing. But we ended up spending more and more time together, and we just, because there was no stakes at the beginning, there were no stakes. I was just like, well, screw it. Like, I'm just going to be myself. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, there's no stakes here. There are no stakes for me. So I didn't hold back. And that's when I found love for the first time, really. Really. And I'm so grateful for that. I am so grateful for that. And it's sad that I don't get to keep it in the present or in the future. But I have it already in my heart, and it's beautiful, and it's untainted. Like, we have not done anything to each other that makes us have any negative feelings towards the other person. And that's an amazing thing. It's just all beautiful. But I can't have it now. And what I tend to blame it on is his mother. And who doesn't actually know about me, but we won't go into that. But the way she is, the way that she's very unyielding, very unforgiving, very, very much conditional with her love, very much conditional. Both his parents were. He lost his dad last year, and he's such a good son. He's such a good son, despite everything that they've done to him. And seriously. He loves them, and he wants them to, he wants to take care of them, and he wants to be a good son. And that's beautiful. He's such a good person. Ooh, there's a little bit of heat in my stomach, like a burning coal. After this, I'm going to have a nice good cry to get rid of all this tension that I'm holding back from actually really crying, because guys, like, my crying is a little out of control when I cry. Excuse me. Which way can I go to get out of this frame? It's either that or C. Something coming out of my nose, and none of us wants that, right? So, with his mom, one thing when I was journaling and thinking about this concept of, what was it? Interbeing together or evolving together. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the idea, what it's called, but the idea is everything is, like, this is because that is, right? Like, basically, Brahm is exactly who he is. What I would, oh, I called him his name. Well, anyway, E is exactly who he is, and I wouldn't change one single thing about him, ever. And because of that, I have to recognize that he is, in large part, the person he is because of his mother. Whatever it was that she did or said, or however, whatever his feelings, whatever the case may be, her behavior and her raising him made him the man he is. And he is a wonderful man. I'm watching my accent. I'm realizing I'm lateralizing a lot of my vowels, and that's not attractive. I need to get back to American Standard. But since I wouldn't change him, I can't wish for her to be any different than who she is. Because if she were any different than who she is, he wouldn't be the same person. So, I mean, sure, I could wish that she could change, but that's not who she is. She's not a person who changes. She's not a person who, I mean, apparently, I don't know. We'll just leave that there. So that helped me with a lot of my feelings. And it's hard for me to have sympathy or compassion for her, and sometimes it really is. Because while I recognize bad things happen to her, and that's why she is the way she is, like, the fact of the matter is, anger. The fact of the matter is, no matter what happens to us in our past, we are responsible for our actions in the present. And we are responsible to clean whatever mess was left by other people's actions up, because otherwise we won't have a fulfilling life, right? Because reality is, no one's going to do it for us. And as an adult human being, one needs to examine oneself and see where one can improve and understand. Like, it's, and basically, yeah, I get that past things that happen have colored her worldview and made her the way she is, but bad things happen. Bad things have happened to me. You know what I mean? And anyway. So I'm having trouble with compassion and sympathy for her, although I don't wish the reality of her to be different, because he'd be different. So that's how I'm dealing with that sort of thing. But like I said, it all goes back to my own preferences and my own needs, right? My need to be loved, my need for companionship, my need to be appreciated for who I am, all of this stuff. Yeah, sure. I mean, in our culture, in culture in general, you need those things, right? But the fact of the matter is that the need for them shouldn't dictate what you do. Or what you say, or how you feel. Well, I mean, we all need love, right? That's a basic human requirement. But that doesn't mean I can only find it in one place. And it doesn't mean that I can't love myself, which is something I'm working on. Lots of, like, up and down from my stomach up to like my throat. Just like, what's the feeling? There's tension and kind of almost like a nauseous feeling, but in like a like in a stick form from like my throat down to the pit of my stomach, my intestines. So, all of it. Speaking of my tummy, we need to go away. Anyway, so that's how I'm dealing with my emotions there. I'm recognizing that it's my need that is causing me to suffer. And what does that need come from, right? That need comes from low self-esteem. And that's the crux of all my issues, really. It's low self-esteem. That's everything that I have an issue with, where I have a problem. It all comes back to that. My procrastination and my not doing the things I need to do to get myself ahead, that's punishing myself. I'm punishing myself, and I'm scared. Okay, fair enough. I'm scared because it's new, and I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. But again, that's low self-esteem. And punishing myself for all my crimes in the past. I'm not that bad a person, let's be honest. I mean, I'm angry at myself a lot of the time for choices that I made and things that I've done. But I've spent 10 years or so, whatever, in a prison of a sort, right? And that's enough. I've punished myself enough. My hair's all over the place, but I don't care. It's fine. So because that's scarcity language and it means you'll never do it. I am working on not punishing myself anymore, recognizing that even if I deserve to be punished, I've been punished enough for what I've done. And that I need to move ahead, that I am moving ahead past that. It's just this period in time, I have these ropes binding me to that, or these shackles binding me to that, and while I'm trying to leave it behind me, I'm still attached to it, and I'm working on that. I'm working on those attachments to it, because that's where you have to work, right? That's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. And that's what I'm working on. So, my procrastination comes from fear and low self-esteem, and so does my suffering because of the breakup. So if we drill down to that, going back to what we're doing, right, the suffering is understood. I understand my suffering. I understand exactly where it comes from, fear and low self-esteem. But a lot of the fear comes from having low self-esteem. So that's the first, going back to where I was starting originally, that's the first noble truth, the existence of suffering and the understand. So recognition, there is suffering, encouragement, suffering should be understood, and realization, suffering has been understood. The second noble truth is arising of suffering. So you're examining what has led you to the suffering. And again, there's the three turns of the wheel, right? There's recognition, encouragement, and realization. So the recognition for this is you recognize that there's a reason. There are things that have led my behaviors or my actions, my thoughts, things about me that I have control of have led to my suffering. Right? There's that acknowledgement. And then the encouragement is those things need to be understood. So for instance, last year I started out writing about my weight and how much that was making me suffer. And like, that was a long thing. Cause it's like, for me, I spent like a good 3 weeks on that. On each turn of the wheel was was a thing. But as an example, my suffering was physical, it was mental, it was spiritual, it was emotional, it was financial, it kept me from doing the things that I needed to do to make money in the career that I have chosen that I want to do. It makes me physically uncomfortable, and it is really bad for my health. And this is all still true. I can feel it, like I feel the weight of it, or like certain areas of my body will get in the way of me doing something. It's really frustrating. It makes me very upset with myself. And that, there you go, that affects me psychologically. I look in the mirror and I have a terrible body image. And, financially, like I said, okay, so in my career, right, professionally, it's affected me. I've hidden, socially, I have actually hidden myself away from people that I don't want to be judged by, which is another issue, but at the same time, that can be solved by me losing weight. And I've been working on it, and I've been doing okay. I do need to step it up. And spiritually, I've just gotten angry. I had a whole spiritual thing that I went into. Anyway, so those are the ways that I'm suffering, right? And then what has led to those ways? Well, obviously, for my food and lack of exercise, but also my mental state, right? My mental habits, all my habits. And I went through and I listed everything that contributed to this problem, this suffering, right? Like honestly, like it's about food. It's physical food, the food that you eat. It's food that obviously it's food that you eat, and it's food that you feed your mind. It's food that you feed your senses. It's your volition and your will, your intention. And those all have to be examined, right? What am I eating? Okay, this. What should I be eating? What am I putting into my brain? What should I be putting into my brain? Right? So instead of like any violent, like images or whatever, any bad messages about myself are something that I should stay away from, and instead maybe listen to a book or read a book. And that's what I'm putting in my mind. Spiritually, I was so grateful that I started connecting with the universe again, because she's great. And that's sort of the crux of everything that I'm doing, quite honestly. My connection to the universe, she's proven herself over the past year. I've asked her and she has answered in one way or another. She's leading me, and I can trust that now. And being able to trust that is great, because I don't trust myself yet. So, also commercials for fattening foods, they create desire and want and stuff like that. So like, let's stay away from those. Maybe let's stay out of the ice cream aisle, that sort of thing. Don't put those things in there. Listen to things or read things that encourage healthy habits. Be around people who encourage healthy habits. That's a big one. And my will, again, my volition, my intention was always to punish myself. And that comes from low self-esteem. It's a big cycle. Anyway, so then you understand that. And then this is the third noble truth, which is cessation of suffering, right? It's knowing that suffering can stop. Because at this point, you've identified why you're suffering, but you're still suffering. Now you know that it can stop. So you realize that well-being is possible, and that you should go for it. you should really work towards well-being. And then that's understood, right? It's obtained. Well-being is obtained. And that is after examining all the different ways in which well-being can be obtained. And then the third one, the fourth noble truth. The fourth noble truth is the eightfold noble path. Was it? Yeah, the eightfold noble path. Anyway, and it's right thinking, right. You know, it's what is it? That's the big one that I can think of. Right meditation, right thinking, right action, right. You know, like all the stuff that I'm gonna look it up so you can see. I can tell you about it because it's pretty cool. The Noble Eightfold Path, right? Could I see it, please? One of its right view. There it is. Right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right diligence, right mindfulness, right concentration. And that is what will eventually lead you towards ultimate well-being. And that's what I journal about. And the point of that, wow, it's been a long time, guys. I didn't mean to go this long. The point is that I am both suffering and working on the suffering, recognizing the causes, and the root cause of my suffering is low self-esteem, and that's true of a lot of people. So that's what I need to work on, and that the way I can work on that is by setting small goals to begin with and achieving them. So that's what I'm doing right now, because that will build trust in myself, that will build confidence in myself, and when I do have that, I can start recognizing that I can make the changes that I need to make and become the person that I want to become the person that I've always thought of myself in my head. I just hadn't realized yet. I hadn't come to that yet. I haven't blossomed into that yet, and for some reason it was always in the future, right? But no, it's got to be now, because otherwise it's always going to be in the future. So I'm going to end this now. It's been a long time. I hope this has been useful. I don't know if it has. Maybe I'll break it up when I put it on YouTube. The point is, even for the suffering, right, I can be grateful. I'm actually grateful for everything that makes me suffer, because it's a new challenge, right? It's a new lesson to learn, a new way to find my well-being. So I just want to remind you guys that you can always choose to have a grateful day.